I speak to you while the world is still restless and nations still strive for control. I speak before anxiety takes hold of your thoughts, and before you carry burdens you were never meant to bear. I am not shaken by rebellion, nor disturbed by chaos, nor threatened by power that rises against me. I call you to rest, not because nothing moves around you, but because nothing moves above me. Come under my authority this morning, and you will find a peace that cannot be stolen. I rule without strain, I reign without fear, and I invite you to place your trust where no opposition can overthrow it. Be still, and know that I govern all things that concern you. I reign over all that unsettles you. I see the noise of resistance, the pressure of opposition, the striving of those who believe power belongs to them. I am not alarmed by the uproar of the world, nor do I scramble to defend my throne. I sit in authority, unthreatened, unmoved. When you trust in my rule, you step into a rest that does not depend on circumstances. You are not required to carry what I already govern. You are not meant to strain where I already reign. I know how quickly unrest finds its way into your mornings. You wake to news, expectations, demands, and uncertainties that press against your peace. Yet I tell you plainly that nothing unfolding around you has escaped my oversight. Resistance does not weaken my authority. Opposition does not diminish my power. When you rest under my rule, you release the need to control outcomes you were never assigned to manage. I see how fear disguises itself as responsibility. You believe you must anticipate every threat, defend every position, secure every future. But I call you to a different posture. Trust is not passivity, it is alignment. When you submit to my authority, you are not surrendering strength, you are receiving it. I bear the weight of governance so that you may walk in peace. The world resists what it cannot control. It rages against truth because truth exposes limitation. Yet my authority is not fragile. I do not react to rebellion with anxiety. I respond with certainty. When you recognize who I am, rest replaces striving. You no longer exhaust yourself trying to force stability. You find stability by remaining under my rule. I know the tension you feel when voices compete for allegiance. Opinions demand agreement, systems pressure conformity, fear urges compliance. But I remind you that I alone establish what stands. When you trust my authority, you do not have to prove your worth, defend your identity, or secure your future through effort alone. I establish those who remain under my covering. I do not ask you to ignore reality. I ask you to see it through truth. Chaos may appear loud, but authority speaks quietly. I govern without shouting. I rule without panic. When you rest in me, your heart mirrors my posture. Calm replaces agitation. Confidence displaces fear. You begin to move through pressure without absorbing it. I am aware of every scheme that attempts to disrupt peace. I see plans formed in arrogance and strategies built on pride. They rise and fall beneath my authority. When you place your trust in me, you are not vulnerable to every shift in power. You are anchored to something unshakable. I remain when systems collapse and leaders change. I do not rush to respond because time does not pressure me. I do not fear outcomes because I establish them. When you trust my authority, impatience loosens its grip. You no longer feel compelled to force resolution. You wait without anxiety because you know I am at work even when progress is unseen. I see how uncertainty tempts you to take matters into your own hands. You believe control will bring peace. Yet control exhausts the soul. Trust restores it. When you submit your concerns to my rule, you are not abandoning responsibility. You are placing it where it belongs. I govern outcomes. You walk in obedience. I rule over resistance without hostility. I address rebellion without fear. I establish boundaries that protect rather than confine. When you align yourself under my authority, you experience freedom within order. You no longer fight against what you cannot change. You find rest in what I already command. I watch how striving hardens hearts. I see how constant defense erodes joy. That is why I call you to rest under my authority. Rest is not inactivity. It is confidence that my governance is sufficient. You are free to live faithfully without fear of losing ground. I guard what is entrusted to me. I do not compete for power. I possess it fully. When you recognize this, your soul settles. You no longer react to threats that have no ultimate authority. You stop fearing voices that speak loudly but lack permanence. You learn to listen for my voice, steady and sure. I know how heavy responsibility feels when carried alone. You were never meant to shoulder the burden of sovereignty. I govern history, I direct outcomes. I establish justice. When you rest under my authority, you are relieved of the illusion that everything depends on you. Peace grows when trust deepens. I do not deny the presence of resistance. I deny its power over those who trust me. When you align with my rule, fear loses leverage, anxiety fades, confidence strengthens. You walk forward knowing that you are covered by authority that cannot be overturned. I am not distant from the conflicts you face. I am present above them. When you look to me, perspective shifts. problems shrink in the presence of truth. Opposition loses intimidation. You move forward without panic because you know who reigns. I establish boundaries that preserve peace. When you submit to my authority, you are protected from the exhaustion of endless resistance. You learn when to speak and when to remain silent. You discern when to act and when to wait. Wisdom flows from trust. I see how quickly rest disappears when you doubt my rule. Doubt fuels unrest. Trust restores calm. When you believe that I govern all things, you are no longer consumed by outcomes. You focus on faithfulness rather than fear. I reign over your future as surely as I reign over the present. Nothing ahead of you surprises me. Nothing behind you limits me. When you rest under my authority, you walk forward without dread. You are not alone. You are not unprotected. You are not abandoned to chance. I call you this morning to release the need to dominate circumstances. I invite you to step under my rule willingly. Submission is not weakness, it is alignment with strength. When you trust my authority, rest becomes natural, peace becomes stable, confidence becomes quiet but unshakable. I remain seated in authority regardless of resistance. I am not threatened by defiance. I establish what endures. When you trust me, you no longer fear instability. You rest because you know who reigns. You rise because you are secure. You move through the day anchored, confident, untroubled, knowing that my authority governs every outcome, every opposition, every uncertainty, and every moment you place beneath my rule. When you submit to my rule, fear begins to lose its voice. Fear thrives where authority is questioned, where power feels uncertain, where outcomes appear unstable. But when you recognize who governs all things, your heart no longer needs to tremble. Submission is not surrender to weakness, it is alignment with certainty. I do not rule with hesitation, and when you place yourself under my authority, you inherit that steadiness. Confidence does not come from knowing everything, but from knowing me. I see how fear enters quietly, often disguised as wisdom. It urges you to protect yourself, to anticipate loss, to prepare for every possible failure. Yet fear cannot coexist with trust. When you submit to my rule, you exchange anxiety for assurance. You no longer ask whether you will be safe. You rest in the knowledge that I govern what touches you. Confidence grows not because danger disappears, but because authority is recognized. I do not demand submission to control you. I invite submission to free you. When you resist my rule, you carry burdens that bend your spirit. When you accept it, you release them. You were not created to manage outcomes beyond your reach. I assume responsibility so that you can live without dread. Fear diminishes when responsibility is rightly placed. I know how often fear speaks through urgency. It pressures you to act before listening, to react before understanding. But when you submit to me, haste slows. You become attentive rather than impulsive. Confidence emerges from discernment. You learn that not every threat requires a response. Not every challenge demands immediate action. Under my authority, timing matters. I watch how submission reads your posture. Shoulders relax. Breath deepens. The constant vigilance fades. You no longer scan the horizon for threats that may never arrive. You trust that I see what you cannot. Confidence is born when vigilance gives way to trust. You move through life without bracing for impact. I do not rule from a distance. My authority is personal, deliberate, and attentive. When you submit, you are not yielding to an abstract power, but to a present governor. I know your limits. I understand your fears. I guide without condemning. Confidence grows when you realize my rule includes care. Fear thrives on isolation. It convinces you that you stand alone, that no one intervenes, that outcomes depend solely on your effort. Submission dismantles this illusion. When you place yourself under my authority, you acknowledge that you are not alone. You are covered. You are guided, you are protected. Confidence flows from belonging. I do not ignore resistance in the world. I account for it. I govern over it. When you submit to me, you stop internalizing conflict as personal threat. Opposition no longer defines you. You understand that resistance exists beneath authority, not above it. Fear loses power when perspective is restored. I see how fear narrows vision. It limits options. It exaggerates threats. It magnifies uncertainty. Submission widens vision. When you trust my rule, you see beyond immediate pressure. You consider long-term purpose. Confidence forms as clarity replaces distortion. You respond wisely rather than defensively. I am aware of how often fear is inherited. You learned it from environments shaped by instability. You absorbed it from voices that mistrusted authority. But I reteach you through submission. My rule is consistent. My authority is just. Confidence grows as you unlearn chaos and relearn order. I do not force submission, I invite it. Voluntary trust strengthens confidence. When you choose to align with me, your will cooperates with peace. Resistance within you quiets. Internal conflict resolves. You stop arguing with reality and start resting in truth. Fear feeds on uncertainty. It thrives when outcomes feel fragile. But when you submit to me, uncertainty no longer intimidates you. You accept that not everything must be known to be safe. Confidence is not the absence of questions, it is the presence of trust. I watch how submission changes your speech. Fear-driven words are reactive, defensive, sharp. Submitted speech is measured, thoughtful, steady. Confidence expresses itself through calm authority rather than volume. You no longer need to prove strength. It becomes evident. I know how fear convinces you that submission equals loss. Yet submission to me restores what fear steals. It restores peace. It restores clarity. It restores courage. You gain confidence not by asserting dominance, but by resting under governance that does not fail. I rule with purpose, not impulse. When you submit, you begin to mirror this pattern. You pause before reacting. You evaluate before responding. Fear thrives in reaction. Confidence grows in reflection. Submission retrains your instincts. I do not shame fear, I displace it. Fear fades when confidence is nourished. Confidence grows when submission deepens. You trust my character. You rely on my judgment. You release the need to control perceptions. Confidence becomes quiet, resilient, enduring. I see how fear often attaches itself to identity. You fear being diminished, overlooked, defeated. Submission reframes identity. Under my rule, you are established, not threatened. You are secure, not fragile. Confidence rises when identity is anchored in authority rather than performance. I do not abandon you when fear resurfaces. I call you back to submission. Each return strengthens confidence. Each act of trust deepens peace. Growth is not instant, it is cultivated. Submission is practiced daily, moment by moment. I govern without volatility. I do not change direction impulsively. When you submit to me, you stop expecting chaos. You anticipate consistency. Confidence grows when predictability replaces fear-driven anticipation. I see how fear exaggerates opposition. It assigns power where none exists. Submission restores hierarchy. You recognize what truly holds authority. Confidence emerges when false powers are exposed. I am not threatened by questions. I am not offended by uncertainty. Submission does not silence inquiry, it grounds it. You ask from trust, not fear. Confidence allows curiosity without panic. I know how fear drains energy. Constant alertness exhausts the soul. Submission restores rest. When you trust my rule, your energy is redirected toward purpose rather than protection. Confidence is sustained, not strained. I watch how submission transforms relationships. Fear breeds competition, suspicion. Submission fosters trust, patience, clarity. Confidence stabilizes interactions. You are not easily provoked. You are not easily shaken. I do not promise absence of challenge. I promise authority over it. Submission aligns you with that authority. Fear loses dominance when challenge is contextualized. Confidence stands firm even when difficulty remains. I govern outcomes beyond your sight. Submission frees you from needing to monitor everything. You trust unseen processes. Confidence thrives when mystery no longer threatens. I see how fear resists waiting. It demands immediate resolution. Submission embraces timing. Confidence trusts process. You no longer rush outcomes. You move steadily. I rule with justice. When you submit, you release fear of unfairness. You trust that what is right will be established. Confidence grows when justice is anticipated rather than forced. I am shaping you into someone whose confidence does not depend on circumstances. Submission builds inner stability. Fear weakens as trust strengthens. You become steady regardless of conditions. I remain constant when everything shifts. Submission anchors you to that constancy. Confidence becomes durable. Fear loses influence. I call you to submit not once, but continually. Each act of submission reinforces confidence. Each choice to trust disarms fear. Over time, fear no longer governs reactions. Confidence becomes the default posture. I govern your life with intentionality. Submission aligns you with that intention. Fear fades as purpose clarifies. Confidence grows when direction is clear. I do not rush transformation. Confidence develops as submission deepens. Each day you trust me more, fear loses ground. You stand taller, calmer, steadier. I see how fear once dictated your decisions. Submission rewrites that pattern. You choose based on wisdom, not panic. Confidence guides action. I remain sovereign regardless of resistance. Submission connects you to that sovereignty. Fear no longer dictates your emotional climate. Confidence stabilizes your inner world. I rule over beginnings and endings. Submission assures you that nothing unfolds outside my authority. Fear dissolves when inevitability is trusted. I am not intimidated by complexity. Submission allows you to release complexity into my hands. Confidence replaces overwhelm. I watch how fear once controlled your imagination. Submission reclaims it. You envision possibility rather than disaster. Confidence expands your vision. I govern with patience. Submission teaches patience. Fear loses urgency. Confidence waits without agitation. I remain faithful. Submission trusts faithfulness. Fear fades when reliability is known. I see you learning to rest. Submission teaches rest. Fear no longer keeps you alert. Confidence allows peace. I rule with authority that does not fluctuate. Submission anchors you. Fear no longer sways you. Confidence becomes unshakable. I invite you to remain under my rule. As you submit, fear continues to weaken. Confidence continues to rise. Your posture changes. Your decisions steady. Your spirit settles. You move forward without dread, without tension, without the need to control, grounded in trust, shaped by authority, sustained by confidence that grows each time you choose alignment over fear.